Is calling this executive committee a meeting to order on Monday, October 14th, a little bit after 4 p.m. And roll call, we have, looks like 6 members present currently. Oh, nope, 7. We have, I'm sorry, I didn't. We have 7 members present. We have a quorum. Are there any appearances of members of the public?
We have had no requests this evening.
Very good. We have a consent agenda, and that's approval of the meeting minutes for September 9th of 2024. And then we have payment of bills that have been approved by the auditor. We have regional planning for $3,359.18, and the executive committee for $782,605.63. And may I have a motion? We have a motion by Member Lehman and a second by our Vice Chair Johnston. Any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the consent agenda, say aye. Opposed? That motion passes. We will go to 4A, and that's Executive Committee. And we have a couple of appointments. And may I have a motion and to put that on the floor? We have a motion by Member Klein, and we have a second by Member Rogal. And any discussion or questions on these? Seeing none, all in favor of the appointments, say aye. Opposed? That motion passes. We will move on to 4B, and that's Finance Committee, and I believe our Vice Chair Lehman will be taking that responsibility this evening.
Yeah.
So, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. The Finance Committee has nothing to be presented for action this evening, but the Finance Committee does have, I think it's 4 items to be presented before the board, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for our Vice Chair Lehman? Seeing none, we will go on to 4C, and that's Health Committee, and our Chair is Susan Schaefer. And Ms. Schaefer, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Health Committee has no items for action today, but we will have an item for the board on Thursday, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no hands raising, I think that moves us to 4D, and that's Justice Committee, and our Chair is Chuck Erickson. And Chair Erickson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. The Justice Committee brings 3 items for action. The first item is action 4D1A, request approval of a resolution for services provided by the Office of the State's Attorney's Appellate Prosecutor, and I so move.
I need a second. I have a second by our Klein. Are there any questions for Chair Erickson or any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the request the resolution from the Office of the State's Attorney Appellate Prosecutor, say aye. Opposed? That motion passes. And Chair Erickson, you have the floor again.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 4D1B, request approval of a grant agreement between the State of Illinois, Illinois Emergency Management Agency, and Office of Homeland Security in County of McLean. Agreement number 25 REPMCLEA, and I so move.
And I need a second. We have a second by our Vice Chair Johnston. Does anyone have any discussion or questions related to this grant agreement? Seeing no questions or discussion, we will vote on the request approval of that grant agreement between the State of Illinois, Illinois Emergency Management, Homeland Security, and the County of McLean. Say aye. Aye. Oh, I'm sorry. Opposed, same sign. That motion passes. And Chairman Erickson, you have the floor again.
Thank you, Chair. The last item on the agenda is item 4D1C. Request approval of an Illinois Medication Assisted Recovery Learning Collaborative Memorandum of Understanding Implementation Grant, and I so move.
And I need a second. We have a second by Member Schaefer. Is there any discussion on this topic? Seeing none, all in favor of the implementation grant, that approval for that implementation grant for the Illinois Medication Assistant Recovery Learning Cooperative Memorandum of Understanding, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And Chair Erickson, you have the floor again.
Thank you. The Justice Committee has no other items for action. We have several items for the board, and I'm always happy.
And we are glad you're happy. And we're going to make our chair of the Property Committee happy too, Val Lehman. You are 4D or 4E, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to be happy. Happy to also say that the Property Committee has no items to be presented for action this evening. We do, however, have 2 to go before the board, and I will entertain any questions you have without emotion.
She will happily entertain any questions, I'm sure. All right. Very good. I see none. So that moves us to 4F, and that is Land Use and Development, and our Chair, Leah Klein.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm happy to say that the Land Use and Development Committee has neither action before this evening or action before the board this month. And I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, then we'll go to 4G, and that's Transportation Committee, and Chair Rogal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Transportation Committee brings one item for action, 4G1A, request approval of a resolution of the McLean County Board assigning and transferring Section 5311 and DOAP funding to Connect Transit, and I so move.
And I need a second for that. We have a second by Vice Chair Johnston. And does anybody have any questions related to this? Member Schaefer.
Yeah, I have to apologize. I did not watch transportation. But when you mentions the transition in the resolution, and then it has a transition date, what if we can't find anything mutually acceptable? Just kind of asking that if things don't work out, what do we have a plan B? Just curiosity question.
I think I'm going to refer to our administrator for that. Are you comfortable with providing some response?
I will do my best to provide a response. So the question is a what-if question, which is difficult to have a deliberate answer to a what-if. However, our preliminary conversations with Connect Transit, as well as leadership in the city and the town, would make a reasonable person expect that this will go through without difficulty in the transition. If we do not have an agreement, we would come back to this board to find a different partner.
Okay, one more follow-up on that. So we are transferring the funding. Is that effective like as soon as the board votes on this on Thursday? Or I'm kind of confused on that.
So it's for state, at the bottom of the resolution, you'll see that it says state fiscal year 2026, and so that would start in July of 25. You're welcome.
I do believe Member Schaefer, that there have also been conversations with the State Department of Transportation also, and they have been highly supportive of this direction also. Again, this is preliminary. This is just the beginning working of this potential transition. Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the resolution for McLean County assigning and transferring Section 5311 and DOAP funding to Connect Transit, say aye. Opposed? That motion passes. And Chair Rogal, the floor is yours again.
The Transportation Committee has no other items for action. We will have 2 items be presented to the board on Thursday, and I will happily answer any questions anyone has.
Seeing no questions, we will move on to the report of the County Administrator 4H. And Ms. Taylor, you've got a couple of items.
Thank you, Chair Metzger. The first item I'd like to present for consideration by this committee is 4H1A, which is request approval of a resolution establishing a holiday schedule for county employees for the year 2025.
And I need a motion for that. I have a motion by Schaefer and a second by Johnston. Any questions or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of the resolution for the holiday schedule for our county employees, year 2025, say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes. And Ms. Taylor, you have a couple of other things.
Thank you. We're next moving to the budget, which would be the recommended budget that this committee has oversight for. So the first would be 4H1B, request approval of fiscal year 2025 recommended budget for Regional Planning Commission. And you have the account line there, begins on page 48.
And we need to put this on the floor. We have Vice Chair Johnston has made the motion and a second by Member Rogal.
I have a short PowerPoint presentation to bring, but I would also like to note that Director Ray Lai and Jennifer Six are here from Regional Planning Commission if you would have any specific questions about any budget lines or grants that they have. So as we said before, this begins on page 48 of your packet, and this is for Regional Planning Commission's budget. The McLean County Regional Planning Commission is a designated MPO organized for Bloomington and Normal's urbanized area. They are mandated to be part of McLean County's single audit due to regulatory changes in GATA. And the budget approved by the McLean County Regional Planning Commission is the one that we're presenting tonight. It was approved by their commission on August 20th of 2024. So this slide is taken from documents we received from Regional Planning. Their total budget is $1,572,709. Salaries are 46% of this budget. Consultants are 40%, and those are the 2 largest categories that you will see. Looking at the budget a little bit differently, this shows expenditures in a different view using a pie chart in our categories that are part of our ERP system. As you can see, this capital assets are 1% here, and that is for computer equipment. For revenues for FY 2025, this revenue chart is a beautiful chart that was created by regional planning staff. It has a lot of acronyms in there, so I'm going to help to explain that for you very quickly. So RSA is Regional Service Agreements. We also have our RAISE grant in there. The SS4A is Safe Streets for All grant. You have SPR, which is State Planning and Research. The FHWA plus FTA refers to the Federal Highway Administration and Federal Transit Administration. The State Metropolitan Planning Grant. And then you have HSTP, which is the Human Services Transportation Planning for Region 6. And CDBG is Community Development Block Grant Program. Looking at that same budget, using revenues, you can see in this pie chart that the county's contribution through our service agreement makes up 3% of the revenue. And that is it.
Are there any specific questions that anyone has related to the documents, either these documents or the documents that we have in our packet? All right, not seeing any questions, so all in favor of the proposed recommended budget for the Regional Planning Commission 001.0010.0010, say aye. Opposed? That motion passes. And we have another one, I believe. Ms. Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Chair Metzger. So 4H1C is a request for approval of the fiscal year 2025 recommended budget for Information Technologies Department 0001, 0043, subdepartments 0047, which is data processing, and 0107, county GIS.
And I need a motion. We have a motion by Schaefer and a second by Klein. And if you want to proceed, Ms. Taylor.
Thank you, I will, and I would like to point out that our director, Craig Nelson, is at the back of the room, should you have questions regarding this budget. But moving forward, starting on page 60, the IT budget totals $4,647,987. Salaries and employee costs comprise, they don't compromise, they comprise 36% of this budget. Majority of this budget falls into the service categories. And our IT department obviously serves all of our county departments for technical support, ranging from help desk issues to level 1 issue resolution. They also do project planning and management for us in our large software contracts. This budget does have a 30% increase overall over last fiscal year. This is impacted greatly with updated software systems, including our new ERP system, our Enterprise Resource Planning System, that will come online in the next year and a half. For increases, we have contract services, which shows a 77% increase. This is for additional Aegis costs for project management and new ERP conversion and file migration costs. For schooling and conferences, there was a 27% increase to send additional staff to training and to train our existing staff on the new technology that's coming online. We have software license agreements, 86% increase. All software pricing is increasing, and that includes additional security software as well as the ERP agreement. We're adding new functionality. As a reminder, with our ERP agreement, that will include functionality for grants management, human resources, and advanced scheduling for our departments with 24/7 scheduling. We have our telephone services increasing 11%. That is for data line costs and for an additional cell phone. Data communications increased 85%. Frontier service charges increased for animal control, and we also have increased internet charges at JDC related to emergency communication lines. Purchase for computer equipment, this was a 55% increase, which included replacing some control workstations at the jail, But the biggest thing of note is laptops over $1,000 that were scheduled for replacement is now coming out of this line, whereas before it was in a services category. So if you move down to the decreases, you'll see computers under 1,000. That line item decreased 50%, and this was previously used for laptops. So that's where you'll see that offset when we moved it from the 800 line to the 800 line from this line. Non-contractual services was a 32% decrease. We're utilizing this line less, and we've had projects that have been moved to contract lines or to maintenance lines. And then capital assets decreased 91%, and that is just due to fewer projects that would hit this line in FY 2025. And we'll entertain any questions you might have.
Any questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the request for approval for the 2024 recommended budget for Information Technologies Department 0001-0043 and Subdepartment 0047 and 0107, say aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And Ms. Taylor, I think we have a few more.
Yes, thank you. So on 4H1D, we have request approval of the fiscal year 2025 recommended budget for shared sales tax, municipalities budget fund 0007, including county board department 0001, mental health program 0060, and non-departmental 0099, and non-departmental program 0099. And that starts on page 67.
And I need a motion for that. I have a motion by Lehman and a second by Klein. And you want to proceed, Ms. Taylor?
Yes, thank you. Beginning on page 67 of your packet, the shared sales tax budget overview. The overall budget totals $7,289,600 for FY 2025. As a reminder, the intergovernmental agreement that comprises this fund has 4 components. That includes the debt service on our jail addition, the contributions to the Aegis replacement project, the mental health in justice settings, including our jails, and the community mental health initiatives. So our newly formed Funding Advisory Council, which is made up of a representative from the Behavioral Health Coordinating Council, a member from the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, a member from the town, the city, and the county, are recommending approval of 2 of those components, the budget for the community behavioral health initiatives and the criminal justice related services. As a whole, this fund or this budget has 48% of the budget going to services, 40% transfers, and 12% for salaries. And that's for our county staff, the director of behavioral health coordination, her administrative staff, and the FUSE program staff. So for budget revenue for 2025, you have the estimated revenues there. Revenue does total $7,289,600 for FY 2025, so that it is a balanced budget, and that you see a breakdown there. There is a typo there. The city of Bloomington and town of Normal are contributing $2,800,000 and $2 million for the town of Normal. We had some zeros that were left off there, in case you were wondering. I corrected it on my slide, but I didn't get the right slide to Joe. Specifically for the community behavioral health programs, this budget total is $3,772,442. It is showing that in the pie chart that the largest category is services at 78% of this budget. The overall budget did increase 56% from the previous year due to the addition of 1.5 million in anticipated programs and project requests. And you can see there from the bullet points that this community behavioral health programs does support staffing for the FUSE program. It does provide transportation, temporary housing, rental assistance. It does support the forum that we have each year, and it currently has an agreement, a contract with Center for Human Services for BHUC. For the criminal justice behavioral health programs, this totals 1.6 million. It's actually $1,690,321 to be exact. And that is for increased staffing for a second mental health pod. It's also for medication for criminal justice clients and inmates, emergency housing and transportation post-release, a jail psychiatrist and mental health nurse contracts, mental health training for staff, as well as mental health education and counseling for clients and inmates. Other costs that you will be approving included in this budget would be the debt service on the jail, which is 1.1 million. The integrated case management system for the next year will be $117,797. And if you're asking yourself why this is so low, it is because our ARPA funds are supporting the county's portion of this project until our third of the project has been invoiced. And so the last cost included in this grant is our Systems of Care grant, which is a federal grant. That budget total is $816,028 for FY25. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
We have a question by our Vice Chair Johnston.
Thank you. I had seen the increase for the contract mental health services had gone up quite a bit, and I was glad to see that. We want the money back in the community. And you alluded to some of the new programming. Is it just new programming, or are we expanding existing programming?
So any of the projects that will be supported by that 1.5 million will fit into the 5 priorities that have been identified by BHCC for the next 12 to 18 months as part of the mental health action plan.
Okay. The other had been kicked around for a little while. I'm not sure where it's landed. If there had been talk about expanding our FUSE program because everybody that fit the criteria for FUSE had already been extended the opportunity for services, and some of them had chosen not to. So there was talk of changing the criteria to open that up. Have we made any progress on that?
I believe that is still being developed by the director and the FUSE staff, but that project was not explicitly, the expansion for that project was not explicitly included to the FAC.
So it's not part of this particular budget, but if it's something that comes up in the coming year, is that something that they could come back to because we do have reserves?
Yes.
We'd be able to do that? Okay, thank you. And my last question is we do know that kind of each year we have been receiving more revenue than we've been expending. Do we have a sense of like how much is on hand that could go back into community services?
That could specifically go back into community service. I wouldn't have that. I could give you the total that we have in reserves as of today.
Yeah, that would be what I'm interested in.
So this does not include the expenses for 2024, but it's 19,650,000.
Okay, and some of that would get divided between kind of Egypt. It's still it's kind of the priorities that we have assigned to this money.
Yes, we have obligated through our contracts and are expecting 12 million to be supportive of our integrated case management system. So we would need 12 million out of this fund for Aegis.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Additional questions? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the approval of the recommended budget for the shared sales tax budget fund 00 0007, and that includes County Board 0001, Mental Health Programs 0060, Non-Departmental 0099, and Non-Departmental Program 0099. Say aye. Aye. Opposed? That motion passes, and we still have another one to go.
So the next up is 4H1E, and that is request approval of fiscal year 2025 recommended budget for County Board 0001, 0001, 0001, and County Board Fleet 0001, 0001, 0100.
And I need a motion for that. We have a motion by Member Klein, and then we have a second by Vice Chair Johnston.
So this budget begins on page 75 in your packet, your agenda packet. However, I do want to bring your attention to a Scrivener's error that is on page 76. And on the record, the very top account line on page 76 is our general property tax. And that should be lowered to $12,304,981. There was an error that we corrected at the Justice Committee, and so to make the budget balance, we need to change this corresponding line. Moving on from that, the county board budget overview. The county board budget contains the revenues that support the budgets within the general fund. Revenues are budgeted for property tax, sales tax, state taxes, and revenues from fees and fines. And you can see there all the various taxes and funds that support this budget. The total revenues are $33,809,056. You can see in the pie chart that the largest sources are the general property tax, with the retailer's occupation tax coming in second. For expenses, the county board expenses include salaries for county board members and contractual expenses related to county board. Those include payments to Dropbox Recycling, Ecology Action Center, programs, contracting with specialized attorneys, our Economic Development Council relationship, the McLean DeWitt Regional Office of Education, and transfers to Metcom for the county's portion of expenses to run the center. For the county board fleet, we've budgeted vehicles for 2 departments. The sheriff's department has budgeted to trade in 6 vehicles, and then our coroner's department will purchase 1 vehicle with the approval of this budget. And I'll entertain any questions.
Member Lehman?
Yeah, thank you very much. I was just a little bit curious on the revenue side. It looked like the Video Gaming Act revenues had a pretty substantial bump. Just curious what we're anticipating happening, or what the understanding is around why we're anticipating Video Gaming Act revenues to bump.
So we have seen an uptick in the revenues from that line item. I can't be more specific than that. Do you have any other? No, we're trending up.
To dovetail onto that, 133%, is that based on historic?
That is from trends and the increased video gaming sources in the county.
If I could just get clarity, so then when you say sources, so allowing for more locations to have more machines, more operations, things like that increasing?
We have seen in the recent past that we have more locations with more gaming available in the county, yes.
Thank you.
And Vice Chair Johnston.
Thank you. Yeah, when I was going through the budget this year, it kind of dawned on me. A couple of years ago, when we first had cannabis legalized and we knew money was coming in, one of our previous members, Carla Robustelli, had put forth a request, and it had been approved by the board that a portion of the cannabis tax money be used for mental health. And that's something that I've never kind of gone back to double check to make sure that we are doing. So I just wanted to check, because this is now getting to be much bigger than I ever anticipated a cannabis tax to be. I think our first initial budgets were like 80. Yeah, it was under 100,000 that we were anticipating annually. So here we are sitting on expect about $800,000, and wanted to see where we are sending this money to support mental health.
I appreciate this question, and I specifically appreciate you giving me a heads up that you'd be asking this question so I could do a little research beforehand. So for the large amount that we are seeing in that cannabis revenue, that does not all come to the county. So the county receives a portion of that. I believe it's 3.75% for the unincorporated areas. So for instance, in 2024, well, let me go back to 2023, where there was a full calendar year that we could look at. The local use revenue that came back to us was $28,500. And then from our referendum that you were referring to, 35% of that should be going to mental health or behavioral health in the county. And so from some research that I was able to do, not only are we meeting the 35%, we're exceeding that amount. So we are paying for things such as training for our juvenile detention center staff, for our court services staff, trauma training across several departments in our McLean County staff. We have a mental health app for law enforcement for the sheriff's department when they deal with traumatic events that is specific to law enforcement, and also our juvenile detention center counselor contract.
I did have one question, and that has to do with our retail occupation tax and our, again, cannabis tax. And we saw a slight increase, and those are once again a trend anticipated. It's not significant, but
Those were based off projections from the Illinois Municipal League.
thank you. All right. Other questions? All right, seeing none, we are going to be voting on the recommended budget for County Board 0001-0001.0001 and the County Board Fleet 0001.0001.0100. Say aye. Opposed? And that motion passes, and that, I think, moves us to another budget.
Yes. 4H1F is request approval of fiscal year 2025 recommended budget for the County Administrator's Office, Fund 0001, Department 0002, Program 0002.
And I need a motion for that. We have a motion by Member Schaefer and a second by Vice Chair Johnston.
So this budget begins on page 81 of your packet. For an overview, the total budget for this fund is $635,316. Overall expenses increased by 6%. Salaries and employee costs make up, as you can see in the pie chart, 73% of this budget, with 25% being services. Operating and office supplies increased 170%, but that only accounts for $4,408. This expense was needed for recruitment supplies and to include the Amazon business account fee in county administration for the county as a whole. For dues and memberships, that was decreased by $2,875 to bring to our actuals. Schooling and conferences increased by $14,000. This is to provide our second annual Heartland Leadership Training, which is available to all county departments to try to build succession planning and also provide professional development opportunities for our leadership. And then telephone service increased. We have an additional request for cell phone by Assistant County Administrator.
Comments, questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the recommended budget for the County Administrator's Office Fund 0001, Department 0002, Program 0002, say aye. Opposed? That motion passes. And last one, I believe.
4H1G is the Illinois Opioid Allocation Fund 0113, Administrative Support Program 0020.
And I need a motion. I have a motion by Vice Chair Johnston and a second by Schaefer.
So this fund begins on page 86 of your budget. McLean County receives funding from opioid settlements through the National Opioid Abatement Trust to distribution. Funding is scheduled to continue through 2038 and must be used, any funds must be used for abatement of the opioid crisis, and there are specific criteria that we must follow as we budget for this fund. Our total budget for FY25 is $400,000. The expenses include $15,000 for medical supplies, $60,000 for the MAR program, $72,400 for a substance abuse counselor in the detention facility, and $251,425 for contracted services, which includes an overdose prevention coordinator, education prevention programming through Project Oz, and a cardiac monitor to be used by first responders during overdose calls.
Any discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor of the Illinois Opioid Allocation Fund 0113 under the Administrative Support Program 0020, say aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And that moves us then to other business and communications, and that's 5A. And we have a request of approval of a resolution of the McLean County Board in support of state action to protect the Mohammed Aquifer. That's found on page 81 through 88. And I need a motion to accept that. We have a motion by Member Klein and a second by Member Schaefer. And any discussion on that? Member, or questions? Member Erickson.
Yes, on the fourth paragraph, the fourth whereas, the third sentence after the comma, says, but lacks the authority to otherwise regulate carbon capture and sequestration projects for the protection of the Mohammed Aquifer. That is my understanding that that is our state's attorney's position at the present time. But if our state's attorney should happen to change his position, or if the law should happen to change, this would not legally bind us to otherwise regulate where we might have authority to regulate, would it?
May we get an opinion from our state's attorney on this topic?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't believe that this would rescind any authority or waive any authority from the county board to regulate if it does have lawful authority, because it's only a recital clause. There's no legal consequence to it.
I just wanted to get that out on the record.
Any other comments or questions? We have a Member Klein.
Just quickly, the administration is already aware, but the last section, be it further resolved, has a typo. It should say the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. It has been corrected for the full board.
Thank you for that recognition and that catch for that scribbler's error. So knowing that those are questions have been answered and things have been identified, all in favor of the resolution from the McLean County Board to support the state action to protect the Mohammed Aquifer, say aye. Aye. Opposed? And that motion passes. And then we go to 5B, and our next meeting will be November 11th at 4 p.m. And we have our member Erickson would like to
Yes, thank
Speak.
you. I would like to recognize our state's attorney on an excellent job down in Springfield before the appellate court. You know, I mean, it's a tough thing to go into a courtroom and take a position when you have another side actively opposing you. But not only did we prevail at the trial court level, but so far we've prevailed at the appellate court level. We'll see where it goes from here. But I do think people should recognize the pressure that is on a lawyer, that when he goes into a courtroom and has to make those arguments, it's not always easy. So thank you for the good job that you did.
I would agree with that. So please, Counselor Sierra.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Member Erickson, for your kind comments. I just don't want to take too much credit where it may not entirely be deserved. I didn't actually get to argue in front of the appellate court. We just submitted a written motion, and I would have rather argued in person, but thank you.
I do think, though, that the work that was done prior to that for our circuit court was well done, and obviously it was recognized. And we also had a member, Member Klein, and our county administrator also participated in that. And I watched that from afar, and Ms. Taylor, or Taylor Williams also participated, and it was impressive, and I think that set us up for success moving ahead. So thank you, and I appreciate you recognizing that, Member Erickson. So thank you for the work, and we do need to have public recognition once in a while, and thank you for allowing that to happen. Anything else for the cause? Seeing none, I believe we are adjourned.